Welcome back. So we're looking at political beliefs and behaviors, learning and thinking about politics. We've covered the learning side. We've looked at how our political beliefs are formed based on what political scientists called agents of socialization. Our family, our religion, the media system, as well as our educational processes and our demographics. I want to transition now to thinking about the specific things that we think about related to politics. So we're going to look at how all of these factors that we just talked about then influence particular thoughts that we have about the political process. So specifically, there are enduring beliefs in the American political system, what are considered to be truths, okay? So we in the United States believe in this notion of individualism, that one's own personal initiative in achieving success. And this belief comes from a number of sources, and also in a lot of ways, it permeates a lot of what we see about the policies that are enacted in the United States. So the belief applies to, for example, our capitalist-based economic system in the US. The phrase of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is a good example of this phrase related to this notion of individualism. Secondly, we also have a value and we also have a belief of egalitarianism. This is the treatment of individuals equally. So no individual is superior over another. So in general, Americans ascribe to this particular belief as well. This belief applies to, for example, things like political rights, like voting. The belief that individuals should have the right to vote. And this is something that, as you've learned in other modules in this course, that ultimately has developed over the course of our American political process, that this notion of egalitarianism has expanded from white male landowners to now including most of the populace of the United States. The key thing to understand, and maybe you've already picked this up, is that these beliefs are in conflict with one another and form the basis of our particular policy debates about the role of government in the management of the economy. So should individuals be more responsible for the decisions of economic processes, or should there be some other type of outside force from the government also helping in terms of planning economic life, as well as the rights of individuals and how they can exercise these. So individual rights versus more group or collective or egalitarian rights. So these particular beliefs form the basis of many debates as well as many divisions in the American political process. So when we think about as well, these other set of beliefs, when they come and cohere together and become a consistent set of beliefs, this is what's known as political ideology. So political ideology, as I just alluded to you, is a coherent set of beliefs about political society and how it should function. What we do know is that if you're thinking about political ideology as liberal, conservative, moderate, or somewhere in between, we know that most individuals fall somewhere in between, that the minority of individuals are either very liberal or very conservative. It's most individuals in the United States kind of have a very hazy political ideology. And this is a large group of American voters. These are also the voters that usually determine national elections for the president as well as for Congress. Many individuals have inconsistent beliefs. They might be liberal on one issue, conservative on another, moderate on another. And what this means is that ultimately cohering these beliefs together in terms of an issue ideology or a political ideology is very difficult for some of these individuals. So there are 4 particular categories that I've included here to help orient you and understand how ideological consistency and inconsistency happens in the United States. The first big group is the pure liberal group, okay? These individuals are liberal on economic matters, so they believe in more government spending to boost the economy, as well as higher taxes, and also more liberal on personal conduct. So these would be things that take place outside the realm of the public sphere, and it gets into the realm of the private. On the opposing side, and this will be kind of thinking about jumping around a little bit for you, you have your pure liberals, and on the other side, you have your pure conservatives. Your pure conservatives are conservative on the economy. They think that there should be less government involvement in the economy and lower taxes and less debt, as well as more personal involvement by the government with regard to personal conduct. So you could think of these as, for example, the government trying to regulate abortion access. So on one side, you have pure liberals. On the other, you have pure conservatives. And then you have those folks who kind of fall in the middle in that hazy area. Libertarians are those individuals that are more conservative on the economy and more liberal on personal conduct. Populists are just the opposite. They are more liberal on the economy and more conservative on social conduct. So you get an idea of where individuals might fall in terms of one of these four categories. I make note to you that these categories are also somewhat limiting, that even many individuals don't fall just cleanly into one of these four categories. However, it's important to understand that when orienting yourself to the American political process, that individuals will most likely, in some cases, be pure liberal, pure conservative, or libertarian or populist on particular issues. One of the things that I've done is I've included a link here for you to assess your own political ideological consistency. So the Pew Research Center has a short quiz that will help figure out where you line up on the political spectrum. The political typology quiz from the Pew Research Center looks at where you fit on the political spectrum. It's a series of approximately 20 questions that are designed to give you an idea of the issues that matter to you in the political process. So I encourage you to take this very short quiz and get an idea of where you might fall with regard to economics and social policy or personal conduct in the United States. I hope you can see after taking that quiz, as well as our conversation about ideological consistency, that beliefs come in many shapes and forms in the United States. Although we see sometimes in the news that pundits are often either on the left or the right, and nowhere in between, what we know is actually most Americans, most average Americans that don't end up on CNN or don't end up in the newspapers on the New York Times are somewhere in between. So I hope that from the political ideology quiz, you can also see that there is much more nuance to the political process and the beliefs that we hold than oftentimes we are led to believe. So next, when we think about our political belief systems in the United States, the other key thing that we need to understand is what are known as attitudes. If beliefs are about what we come to understand to be true, attitudes are about what we like or dislike about American politics. And I want you to think of this as you're asked a question, for example, do you approve of the president's job performance? This is an attitude. It's something that can change based on particular circumstances. Whether or not the president does a good job managing the economy, whether or not the president is strong and decisive with regard to military action in a foreign country. These are the types of attitudes to think about when understanding American politics. This is what we temporarily like or dislike. These are also the things that shift quite a bit. Beliefs are much more immovable. Attitudes shift quite a bit. So a couple of ways that we can come to understand attitudes in the United States, and a couple of different attitudes that we hold. First is legitimacy. Political legitimacy is our confidence in the functioning or integrity of the political institutions in the United States. Whether or not we believe that elections fairly represent the will of the public, so whether or not a presidential election was fair and or fraudulent, as well as whether or not our political systems work for us the way that they should work. So for example, political science and communication research actually has looked at what happens to supporters of a political candidate once that political candidate loses an election. Interestingly enough, many supporters of the losing side of a political candidate often justify the loss by claiming electoral fraud. A way to understand how political legitimacy can oftentimes shift based on different circumstances in the political process. Another key attitude that is formed in our American politics is what is known as political efficacy. And just as a spoiler alert, this is also one of those ones that the AP government exam loves to focus on. So you might want to tune into this particular definition fairly closely. Political efficacy is the extent to which individuals assess their influence in the political process. Do individuals believe that they have control over political events or can influence them in some type of meaningful way? So, individuals who believe that they can actually influence the political process, that they have the knowledge, they have the tools necessary to influence the political process, are much more likely to participate in political life. This seems to make sense on some type of intuitive level for us, but it's something that political scientists have found, that those individuals who are much more efficacious, who believe that they can have impact on the political process, are also much more likely to vote. I've included here as well a link to understand how political efficacy looks in terms of the present nature of the American electorate. This research from the Pew Research Center looked at perceptions of the public's voice in government and politics. And I want to call your attention specifically to these particular pie charts here, because it gives you an idea of what I just talked about with political efficacy, how individuals look at their influence with government. And what you can actually see is that most individuals say that they can say and influence some aspects of government life in the United States. But it also talks through some of those particular pressure points where individuals might be more or less efficacious about particular aspects of government and political life. So I encourage you to check this out. Again, I think that these types of articles are very important for those exam essay questions that you will have to take for AP Government. So when we think about the importance of these two attitudes, legitimacy and political efficacy, the key thing to understand is the more legitimate someone finds political processes in the United States, as well as the more politically efficacious they are, the greater likelihood they are to politically participate. So the more confidence you have in the political process and the more you believe that you can influence it, you're much more likely to then try to influence it in some type of way by petitioning the government, by voting, by writing a letter to an elected official, or by emailing an elected official or posting on their Facebook page. These are very important attitudes in terms of thinking about politics. So this section of the course has been designed to give you an overview of thinking and learning about politics, how we learn about the American political process, where we learn about it, and as well as what we think about, the beliefs and attitudes that we have. So the next section of the course, we'll be looking at measuring these types of beliefs and attitudes and trying to understand public opinion in the United States. So things like polling questions, as well as focus groups, and other types of ways that we can assess the attitudes that individuals had. So I look forward to seeing you in the next section of the course on measuring public opinion beliefs.